Recent studies have come out showing which states in the US are the dumbest based upon things like IQ averages, high school graduation rates, residents with college education, and just sheer stupidity. Mississippi. Speaking of stupidity, you'd think you'd need to be a genius or at least a spelling whiz to live in a state that's as hard to spell as Mississippi is, but apparently that's not the case. In fact, according to the World Population Reviews, the average IQ score of the residents in this state is around 94.2, well below the US national average of 98. But IQ is not the only thing that makes Mississippi one of the dumbest states. Their laws are dumb too. In the town of Truro, a groom-to-be is required to prove himself manly prior to the wedding by hunting and killing 3 cows or 6 blackbirds. Now that's something worth tweeting about. And it doesn't end there. Nope, the state is so backwards that you're even allowed to have 1 illegitimate child, but if you got 2, you can be arrested. Yeah, no kidding. Mississippi's that dumb. Nevada. With an emphasis on duh, Nevada isn't too bright either. The odds of winning in Las Vegas is 1 in 30, but running into anyone with intelligence in the state is next to nothing. The World Population Review has determined that the average income of Nevadans is a mere $37,865, with a poverty rate of about 13%. Maybe that's because nearly 5.5% of Nevadans have less than a 9th grade education. Ta-duh! Since education isn't everything, we also need to look at IQ. Nevadans, though, fall here as well. In fact, the average Nevadan has a 96.5% average IQ. To give it a fair shot, though, common sense was factored in. The fact that a law is required to forbid citizens from hiding spray paint in grocery carts in their basements says a lot. In fact, it kind of says it all. Nevada's just dumb. Tennessee. Tennessee is one of the most beautiful states in the nation, which makes people happy, but not smart. You know what they say? Ignorance is bliss. I mean, seriously, do they even know how dumb they are? Probably not. So, the education department in Tennessee did a little bit of testing, and they found out that only 3 in 10 Tennessee students met their grade level expectations in English, and 1 in 4 in math. Science comprehension dropped by a whopping 1/3 from the already poor scores of the past couple of years. When confronted with the results of the study, the powers that be try to blame the pandemic, but since the steady decline has been going on for well over a decade, the excuses fell on deaf ears. It doesn't take a brain surgeon to make the dim diagnosis. Tennessee is dumb because their education is flunking. Come on, Tennessee, you deserve a heck of a lot better. New York. New York is so dumb that there is a neighborhood and Brooklyn with a name to prove it. Dumbo. Dumbo is an acronym for Down Under the Manhattan Bridge Overpass. The name change was part of a plan in 1978 to be able to make the ghetto waterfront hood sound trendier and more attractive. Originally, it was just dumb, but the residents didn't want to live in a neighborhood called dumb, so they made it dumber and was dubbed Dumbo. The largest thing about it is that the area has a perfectly good name before, the Fulton Landing, which makes a lot more sense. The plan worked, and now there are yuppies with designer puppies and lots of wealthy people living in the 10-block radius within 500 tech firms, and although a study conducted by Inc.com ranked New York 26th in intelligence, anyone willing to live in a place called Dumbo can't be all that smart. New Mexico. New Mexico is not making the grade. According to a research analysis done by the website Slacker, had recently crowned the Land of Enchantment the disenchanted title of being the state where students are least likely to graduate. With a total graduation rate of only 74%, it's a fail for sure. The dropout rate is so astronomical that 69% of its students are economically disadvantaged, while over 71% are Native Americans that have trouble reading, writing, and even speaking English. Plus, over half are homeless, so it's clear to see that the real fail is on the part of the state government. It's a no-brainer that citizens without a high school education do tend to make less income, which does mean less revenue for the state. If New Mexico would just wisen up, they'd fix some of the problems that plague the state, and then the whole state would be smarter and would have more money too. West Virginia. West Virginia has absolutely no class. It's common knowledge that a higher education does open more doors to higher pay, but West Virginians just don't get it. Research done on the overall general education in the state shows that only 21% of the population has a bachelor's degree, or, well, any degree for that matter. And honestly, that is shameful when the national average caps at 33%. Although there are 44 colleges in the States, there's only a measly 24% graduation rate across all those universities. And many of those people who do graduate are not sticking around. The latest U.S. Census had shown that West Virginia dropped by a whole 3.2 population, the highest in the nation, making it lose a seat in Congress. West Virginia is going to great lengths to try and rope folks into their state by offering $12,000 of free outdoor activities so as to entice freelancers and remote workers to move here. But with a 16% poverty rate and the highest in obesity, heart disease, and drug overdose rates, well, I'm just gonna let you do the math on that one. Hawaii. Hawaii is one big beach, but there's a big difference between beach and brains, according to the Berkeley Research Group at BRG.com, which gave the Aloha State the washed-up status of being the dumbest state. Their speculation is that it's due to the fact that people who live in paradise really don't have time to study due to the fact that they're too busy going to the beach. The Washington Post had gave Hawaii the sinking spot of being the least intelligent state, as they factored in IQ, ACT, and SAT scores, along with the graduation rates of both high school and university students. While Hawaiians will argue that they're actually the smartest, they've actually found a way to be the most expensive state. That is, when you consider the average price of a house, which is over $1 million. Like Forrest Gump summed it up best, stupid is as stupid does. Arkansas. Arkansas is home to the Ozark Mountains, gushing with hot springs and well over 600,000 acres of lakes. According to the World Population Review, it's home to some of the nation's dumbest people as well. In fact, it is the 8th least educated state, with only about 86% holding a high school diploma, and it has next to the lowest residence in college degrees. The quality of its universities is the 5th worst, which really doesn't have students standing in line to attend them. Perhaps it's all due to the laws that say if a teacher wants a raise, they cannot cut their hair into a blob. It's not just the education system that's backward in Arkansas, though. Everything is. Arkansas is the 5th worst place to have a baby because they have to figure out which cousin it belongs to. All the same, though, Arkansas is dumb on so many levels. Texas. They say that everything is bigger in Texas, so those who are dumb must be really dumb. The World Population Review confirmed the finding, stating that Texas has one of the lowest number of high school diploma holders in the U.S. According to the study, Texas now sits at 43rd overall in the nation, falling from 39th place just a few years prior. Talk about a big Texas misstep. What is probably the largest contributor to this is that most high schools in Texas spend less than $9,000 per student, which is the lowest than any other state in the nation. Consider that with a national average of about $12,000 per student, you can see just how uneducated these cowboys really are. Coupled with the fact that Texas is filled with colleges and universities, 170 of them with about 1.6 million students enrolled, it really doesn't take much to see how low in the IQ poll that these folks really are. Oklahoma. Oklahoma is sometimes referred to as the armpit of the U.S., so it's not surprising that Okies aren't too stinking smart. It is stated that the state raised the legal drinking age to 25 in an attempt to be able to keep alcohol out of high schools, and that's about right. The U.S. News had published a report putting it at the 8th worst state in the nation department. For the past 4 years, Oklahoma has led the nation with the most tax cuts in education, and teacher pay is next to zip. It's not a crime to be uneducated, but it is a crime to commit a crime, and it's a proven fact that the lack of education mixed with high poverty rates is a disastrous combination. But when you live in a state with an average of 52 tornadoes a year, it kind of puts a new spin on stupidity. The writing on the wall is there, but since 1 in 5 Okies are illiterate, not like they would notice anyways.